Again, when you look at this carefully, you think of its relationship in its flatness and lack of sculptured relief, but in its patternings of the verdures, of the flora in Japanese prints. And also, please notice what he has used. He has used Mexican fire opals and amethysts. He was very interested not only in American design and American fauna, he was very interested in using American gemstones, and he was focused on not using gemstones that made his jewels unavailable to all but a handful of people. Therefore, you will see in this the use of a combination of fire opals, and a simple amethyst. There are more examples, and I think you can see the relationship very clearly with the tendrils of Japanese woodblock prints of flora. Also, please notice in the brooch in the middle on the left, he saw the beauty in nature's gemstones that did not necessarily have to be valuable, and therefore you see what's called a boulder opal, an opal still left in the matrix, making it really quite valueless, but what an extraordinarily beautiful effect he produced using an opal still embedded in the matrix. Now, he had, to be fair to the other people at Tiffany and Company, he had the support of George Frederick Kuntz, who was the greatest gemologist of history, who was Tiffany's gemologist. He's the man for whom kunzite, the mineral or the gemstone, is named. He also named morganite, which he discovered for J.P. Morgan. He discovered Mexican fire opals. He was a great champion of American gemstones. So you're going to see a lot of American gemstones this evening, as well as things based on very available design inspiration in our country. Now, that wasn't always the case. As he traveled the Mediterranean after his studies in Paris and his studies of Orientalism, he encountered a great deal of antique art and became very interested in antique revival pieces. This is a necklace that he made out of nephrite and amethyst, again, rather inexpensive stones, and it's in the antique style, of course, and this was shown at the Paris Salon of 1906. It was not only shown, it was the central piece of Louis Comfort Tiffany's display in Paris in 1906, and it is still in all its beauty, and it's downstairs 108 years later for all of you to see. And when you go downstairs and look at the show, please don't miss this necklace. It is something wonderful. It attracted huge press attention in France in 1906, and it's worthy of our attention still today. More examples of his jewels using stones that are not incredibly expensive. One of these belongs to the KIA, the peridot brooch you see at the lower left. Again, these filigrees and enamels corresponding to a great deal to some of his work in stained glass. And the one at the top is interesting because of his love of pearlescence and iridescence in his vases. Of course, moonstones were very important to him. And the blue stones you see with the moonstones are actually American sapphires. Louis Comfort Tiffany almost never used diamonds, rubies, emeralds, and sapphires in his jewels. He wished to make these jewels, as he said, little ambassadors of taste that would go out into the world and reach a large audience. And therefore, those beautiful blue sapphires you see come from the Yago Gulch in Montana. And people at first said, oh, Montana sapphire. Well, it turns out that Montana sapphires are just as good as any other sapphire in the world. They're very beautiful, and I'm happy to say at Tiffany and Company, we still sell them. Another example of, in this case, a green tourmaline, but combined with Montana sapphires. These configurations of his brooches went very closely with his structures of many of his mosaics, which I think you'll see in the show downstairs. Now, we began with a peacock feather, you will see throughout his stylizations of the peacock feather and the eye of the peacock feather, a perfectly beautiful example, again using an opal in the beginning, in the middle, because of course this related directly to his iridescent and the spangled and mottled glass which he used in his lampshades and in his stained glass windows. This is, of course, his most famous necklace, the Peacock Necklace. It's in the Homer Morse Museum in Florida. It was worked on for the Paris Exposition. It was not finished in time. It was so complicated to make. And I don't know what I can tell you about it, but just that if you look at it, it's an incredibly magnificent piece of American jewelry. Again, one of the greatest pieces of jewelry created in this country by Mr. Tiffany. Again, his Orientalist leanings, obviously inspired by Mughal jewelry from India. He and one of his friends, in fact, put together huge collections of jewelry from India, which he sold at great profit to his father. That was rather nepotistic in business dealings. But he also put together a large collection of these things, which is part of the basis of the Hall of Gems of the Field Museum in Chicago. So Louis Comfort, Tiffany, and George Frederick Kuntz put together these shows of jewels for various World's Fairs, and which form the basis both of the Museum of Natural History in New York and the Field Museum in Chicago. So if you go to the Hall of Gems in the Field Museum, you will still today see many, many of these pieces that were gathered by George Frederick Kuntz and Louis Comfort Tiffany. It's a fine example of how you can modernize Mughal jewelry design. Then he did something completely astonishing to the world of jewelry in 1909, 1910. He made scarabs because of his love of Egypt once again. He made scarabs out of Favreau glass and made pieces of Tiffany jewelry, not using gemstones at all, but using glass scarabs. Again, making the jewelry affordable to a far larger audience. It was quite a shock, I'm sure, to the jewelry industry worldwide. How could the world's greatest jeweler suddenly be using pieces of glass in the middle of its jewels? But look at the effect. How could you not want to use them? They were so perfectly beautiful. And you will see examples of this downstairs, not this necklace, but a number of pieces with these glass scarabs, which so revolutionized the jewelry world in 1909, 1910. And of course, back to Egypt. When Tutankhamun's tomb was discovered in the early 1920s, that was a new wave of Egyptomania in the Nile style. This necklace is downstairs too, and it's possibly one of the two most beautiful neo-Egyptian style necklaces that were created. By the way, he was also a very good sculptor. It's not simply hung on a cat. He sculpted that statue of the bronze cat as well. There was very little the man couldn't do. And that I suggest you look at closely downstairs because it's another absolute marvel of American jewelry. And there's another one which is downstairs from a little earlier period. And you will notice a number of pieces of jewelry of Louis Comfort Tiffany combining for his Neo-Egyptian things like his lazuli and gold, which you know is the great combination of pharaonic jewelry in Egypt. Obviously, the greatest example is the Mask of Tutankhamun, which is all lapis lazuli and gold, but here you see that beautiful combination in this Neo-Egyptian piece. Now, a little later on, towards the end of his career, he went to using what would be more acceptable moving into the 1920s and the Art Deco style. He had nothing to do with Art Deco. He had absolutely no sympathy with it. People accuse him of always being a Art Nouveau artist, but he really wasn't. He developed what is worldwide known as the Tiffany style, which is or isn't an offshoot of Art Nouveau with all its whiplash curves and tendrils, But I think of what you've seen, there are no whiplash curves and tendrils in what he did. It's a very personal and unique style of his own. This is fun to see because you will see on the left the original drawing for that necklace of moonstones and Montana sapphires. Again, this one of his favorite combinations of Louis Comfort Tiffany in jewelry. Moonstones, no, do not come from the United States. They come from Southeast Asia, but they suited his purpose very well for their pearlescence and opalescence. Here's a very, very rare example of Tiffany using faceted gemstones, but none of them of tremendous value, but of tremendous beauty. Very glamorous suite of jewelry, but using very, very affordable colored stones. And they're a perfect example of American gemstones. I don't know how many of you know, but superb green tourmalines come from Maine. And this is a wonderful Louis Comfort Tiffany necklace demonstrating how you can use American gemstones. That beautiful suite of tourmalines, which are a perfectly matched color, therefore must have come from a single huge tourmaline crystal found in Maine, is all American gemstones. And please note again his use of the trailing vines from Japanese woodblock prints surrounding them. These themes keep recurring through Louis Comfort Tiffany jewelry, and they're always innovative in their new use and wonderful to watch.